Vesanto Melina, thank you so much for joining us on the Plan Trainers podcast today.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be joining you. Yeah, I'm so glad we could reach out to people even in this unusual times. Yeah.
Thank goodness for this internet and electricity and all of those things that really allow us to bring so many amazing guests to our listeners and create so much opportunity for everybody. And it's super. You're a fellow Canadian over in British Columbia, and we wanted to know if you have a moment of gratitude to share with us and the listeners before we begin.
I do. Well, I live in co-housing. It's like a village, and we have 31 households. And I've been very grateful to be able to share this time in a community that nobody's got sick yet, but we all keep distanced and take care. And yesterday we even had a brass band come and play in the courtyard. And I think it's fun when people can find really creative ways to share our times together during COVID. So I'm grateful for the creativity and including what you're doing so that, people can feel connected with other people even though we're staying physically distanced. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And that's so interesting. You heard about a lot of those at the beginning when summer first started or spring first started, where there'd be bands playing outside and trying to kind of lift up the energy. And I haven't really heard about that in quite a while, especially, over on the East Coast where things are that much colder and, the
Yeah.
snow's starting to build up. But it's a good thing for people to think about how we can continue to bring people together the way that we did at the beginning, because although we've just hopped into 2021,
Yeah.
things are really not much different than they were a couple of weeks ago, right? It's still the same.
It's
Yeah.
because when
That's
things are new, people tend to get excited about it and, oh, we have to make
yeah.
this opportunity to hang out with each other and do something. We're locked up. But then you kind of get used to it and you get into a momentum or routine and stagnant. And that's kind of where people are probably at right now, and moving into the new year. It's a great opportunity for us to really spice things up again and get kick started and find ways like you're doing in your community to stay excited and keep things fresh.
Another one that we're doing and have been since March is having our fitness classes online. So we have our same teacher. We pay her $30 a month, just send an e-transfer. And we have classes. I host the Zoom, but we have classes Monday, either Wednesday or Thursday, and Friday. And so they're exactly the same teacher, same class participants, but we're all on Zoom.
Yeah.
And
I don't know if people saw on our TikTok at Plant Trainers the other day where I put a picture of me doing a little Irish dance, and I was doing an online Zoom class where it's all fitness
oh,
pushed into dance, and all of the different songs were all from different countries. And it's really interesting how you can broaden your horizons now and do so many different things that you couldn't necessarily do before because you don't have enough time or you don't have access to people. So it's wonderful what we've been able to do for sure.
it is. Yeah. That's fun.
So
Okay.
let's go back a little bit in time, and why don't you tell us a little bit about your plant-based journey and how you found a plant-based lifestyle?
Okay. Well, I'm 78, and so I've had quite a while to be exploring this. And back in the late 70s, in the mid 70s, there was a book called Diet for a Small Planet by Francis Moore Lepay. And so we were exploring going plant-based, and we were learning how to meditate at that time. And we heard that it was easier for a meditator to go plant-based. Like eating meat was like carrying rocks to the top of the mountain, like it would make your journey more difficult. And of course, we didn't even know what that meant, but we just did it anyway. And my friends and I took turns cooking for each other. And this is a really good way if people want to start. But we would each cook, six of us, one night a week for the other six of the six. And we would try and outdo each other. So we started making really good food. And so my introduction was not about any ethical or environmental reasons or even health at that point. It was just an exploration. And then I went to India for 4 years. And that was, of course, a wonderful place to learn about eating more plant-based. They would include dairy, but typically the meals were vegetarian. And so I got introduced to using spices and herbs and that kind of thing. So it was through food that I got interested. And then when I came back, I'm a dietitian, and I started teaching university, would be 1965. So that would be 54 years ago. And I realized that the dietitians didn't know anything about going plant-based. Like, it wasn't taught at school anything about it, like how to do it or reasons or anything. So I started doing classes, and books came out of that. And I was just the right thing at the right time. And it became very popular. Our first book became a bestseller quite quickly. But we also had opposition. The Dairy Farmers of Canada wrote a 45-page booklet against our book called Becoming Vegetarian, because we had a chapter in it where we told people how to get the nutrients in dairy without using dairy products. And they were quite upset about that. And we weren't saying dairy was terrible. We were just saying, here's how to get nutrients. But anyway, that just made our book even more popular. Somehow
I was going to say, first of all, that's the highest compliment. If they took 46 pages or and spent that time creating something against what you did, like, wow, that's a win. And it becomes controversial, and even negative attention sometimes can end up positive attention. And when it's for the right reasons, even better so, right?
That's right. So anyway, it turned out just that we were just on this journey. And then Brenda and I have proceeded to write books together we got 15 books out now. And I was getting a bit tired of writing books. So the last one she did with Reshma rather than with me, but we will do another couple, I think. But I'm wanting to help other young dietitians and writers get into this. So anyway, but we've just had a wonderful experience going and traveled all over the world, working with different people and really finding out how good people are all over the place. So many people are wanting to bring up their children plant-based and do this for environmental reasons, really care about the direction that we're going. So it's heartwarming. Yeah.
It is heartwarming. And of course, you're referring to Brenda Davis, who was on episode 383 and 210 as well with us. So that's super amazing. And we did have Dr. Reshma Shah on as well. And they wrote that last book together. But the other books that you've written with her, completely amazing, and so much good information, inspiration, facts. It's really great what you were both able to be put out. One of the questions that I get quite often from either people who are watching us on social media or sometimes clients coming in is that they're kind of a little bit grumpy when they start eating plant-based. Maybe they're not getting enough nutrients, or maybe they're not eating enough food, or maybe their bodies aren't used to it. So can you talk to us a little bit about the grumpiness that people might feel when they're eating plant-based and how we can deal with that?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. I find that it's really a transition. Very few people can just go, okay, I'm going plant-based. I've got the environmental reasons. Tomorrow, I'm never going to eat another animal product.
That's me.
Not that you could do that.
I did that, yeah.
I've met, I think, about 3 people. Well, now 4. And other people are, yikes, there's my favorite thing, or what am I going to do when my father-in-law comes over, because he won't be caught dead eating this, kale or something. And it's sometimes a transition. For some people, they'll just do it, and that's it. but most of us take time, and then you're aware during that time, hey, the thing that I really liked eating, it's not available to me now, or I have to feel deprived. So there can be that source of problems. And I usually caution clients. I have clients from all over the world, and they just, it's better to go at your own pace, to learn what's in the store, to find some good recipes, to figure out how to deal with family. For example, at Christmas, we've had, in our first book, Becoming Vegetarian, we had vegetarian diplomacy. And that was looking at how to deal with different situations at work. Your colleagues are all going out for work, or at Christmas. What do you do when your family's used to having a big turkey and you're now aware that there are environmental issues involved and there's a tragic ending for that bird, all crammed up with other turkeys and then get slaughtered. So there's some different approaches we wrote for that, which you could, for example, you could say, I don't want to cook the turkey, but you could bring one over if you want, if it's at your house. Or you could say, I don't want turkey at my house, we could have it at your house. Or you could say, let's see what options we have, and use things that, like the Gardein option or tofurkey, and a couple of things we'll talk about today, what kind of gravy, different attractive items for the table. Or you could say, let's have a skating party instead of dinner, where people are kind of used to that everything, you could have cookies and you could have all plant-based things. Or you could say, you can't do this in COVID, but I'm going to go to Mexico or Hawaii or something like that, and I'll come back in January, So we had different options for different kinds of people, and realize how some will suit some individuals, some will suit others. And so that can help, just to find your own style of evolution, because it doesn't seem to work very well to preach to people about changing. It doesn't work at all.
Preaching definitely does not help, and not everybody is the same, right? It took Adam 12 hours to go plant-based. It took me almost 8 months. So, different people need to have different options, different personalities. We're dealing with different personalities in our families. So thinking about those options are great. And the truth is that if you ask 10 different people how to approach it, you'll probably get 10 different answers as well. Some similar, but still very different.
Yeah, that's right. So I find that when I have clients that I don't have they'll say, could you do a menu for me? But it doesn't really work that way. We work it out together. What would be breakfast options? What would be lunch options? What would be dinner options? And make it very personalized. And people are struggling with different aspects. But one of the things is that it isn't harder to be plant-based than to be have a diet based on animal products. But the transition period is a bit more challenging. So as long as you think, okay, I'm just going through this for a little while, where I have to find new ingredients and learn some different cooking. And luckily, COVID's a good time to do this, because you've got the time and the home-based lifestyle to do this.
Yeah, the transition could be challenging for a lot of people, and a lot of people, well, it's a lot easier nowadays than it was 10 years ago to go and transition to a plant-based lifestyle. There's so many more options available that are alternatives to meat and dairy products that are out there. So that certainly helps. Although those are not all healthy foods. Let's be clear on that.
And restaurants have plant-based options.
Yeah, but they are super helpful. But a lot of people that do transition, some of them tend to feel down often throughout the day. And part of the reason that is because simply they may not be eating enough calories. They may not be eating enough food from what they're used to. And so when they get down, is there a strategy for them to remember to be consuming the right amount of food that you go through with people you work with?
Good point. Okay, so one of the things that I've been interested in is about blood sugar and how to keep our energy up during the day. And the reason I got interested in this is because my family had a lot of addictions in it, a lot of alcohol addiction. And so during the 70s and 80s, I was exploring this. I found that one of my sisters and I, we could both like start drinking wine and then drink everything we could lay our hands on. It was like there was some kind of physiological reaction, and I'd seen that in my dad and his twin brother and my grandfather's father, and it's just like and the same in my mom's family. There were certain people. So I got interested in how to keep your blood sugar level, and I went, first of all, read a book called Eating Right to Live Sober, and then also went down to the Betty Ford Foundation to talk to their dietitians to see about keeping your blood sugar. And I learned in the Eating Right to Live Sober that some people have an insulin response where their blood sugar drops and they can't keep it stable very easily. The solution to this, as you'll find out, is using legumes, beans, peas, lentils. So that's when it comes back to food. But it took me a while to figure out, well, first of all, more broadly, and also for myself, how to manage this so that I didn't get this blood sugar drop. So some people will just start out with, they're going to have the pasta salad that's at the company, the restaurant, the lunch place at work or something like that. And that won't hold you very long, or they'll just have oatmeal at breakfast, and it'll last them part of the morning, and then they're desperate, will just grab anything they can lay their hands on. So what I found was that for some of us, our blood sugar drops a few hours after a meal unless we take some measures to take care with that. And I had something called a glucose tolerance test, which is a test they do for diabetes, but it also shows your response to insulin and response to eating sugars. And what you do is go into a lab and you have a measured dose of glucose, and then they take your blood just before that and then every half hour or hour after that and see what happens. And for those of us who have hypoglycemic, hypo meaning low and glycemic meaning sugar, and emic meaning blood, reaction, our blood sugar will go up and then crash. And so that's what I found, is that with sugars, or I find this also happens with wheat sometimes, I'll have my energy goes up and then it crashes. And the response is quite different with other different foods.
Sorry to interrupt. Is that an insulin response, and does that have anything to do with the pancreas, or is it different?
Yeah, it is. So it's like some of us have brown hair, some have blonde hair. So some of us have pancreases that react in one way and some another. So I've had clients who were okay to only eat once a day, and they could do that. Their pancreas could keep things kind of steady on the insulin and blood glucose wavelength. If they just ate lots at one time, they were okay. But some of us, we can't manage this long period. And so we may need to eat certainly 3 times a day, or perhaps 5, have some snacks, and nourishing snacks, not junk food snacks.
And we're not even talking about people that are diabetic. We're just talking about the average person whose regular blood sugar level could spike throughout the day, could go up and down at any time. But we're not talking about diabetes, right?
That's right. Now, this is a test for diabetes. And I found that often the people who have, I worked for certain times in addiction treatment centers. I did that with Indigenous people. I worked with the Salvation Army Women's Treatment Center. And you'd find that the people who had alcohol addictions often had 80% of their relatives could be diabetic, would have at least one diabetic in the family.
And diabetic in the family, are you talking about type 1 diabetes or also type 2?
Could be either type. Could be either type, but mostly type 2.
Right.
But so it was just like having a pancreas that, was just a bit more vulnerable, or that didn't keep your blood sugar level as well. So it was just like a physiologic difference.
So what can we do if we think we fall into that category or know that we fall into that category? Would it be like putting some lentils into your morning breakfast muffins to have that kind of carbohydrate in there, or adding some split mung beans to the oatmeal mix so that when you cook your oatmeal, you're getting a little bit more in it? Would that work?
Yeah, that could work. And it can be really simple. Like my husband puts some peanut butter on his toast every day. That's every single day, and I'll find that if I use soy milk or put tofu in my smoothie, which is right here. Yeah.
Nice and green.
Yeah, nice and green. But that'll give me some staying power. And if I don't do that, like if I just have a fruit smoothie, then my blood sugar's just going, every time I have some, it'll go up, but it doesn't last very long. So what we find is that, first of all, people have certain reactions when their blood sugar drops. And we'll notice, like, some people will get just frantic, they're like really hyper. And some people will be just about comatose, And I've had clients who were almost suicidal when their blood sugar dropped. Like, we have quite different reactions. Some people get cold. Some people get quite agitated. We can be depressed or become kind of dizzy. One that I found, I went and had a glucose tolerance test in a lab, and I was there for 4 hours in the lab, and I couldn't see to read. So they had all these magazines, and I couldn't even read them. It was interesting to me to see how much this blood sugar drop after having the test dose of glucose, how it made me not able to see. And then after I left the lab, I could see again, after I had something to eat, actually. So yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Carry on.
I wanted to ask, if you are in that state, whether it's lethargic or hyper or what have you, what do you recommend people eat when they're in that situation?
Okay. So I'll just say a little bit more about the situation. So quite a few people find they get grumpy. Like, I'm for sure that, it's like your brain is going, look, Vesanto, we got to get you something to eat right now, and I mean it, or sometimes I don't even know that's what I want. Like, my husband will go, we have to go into a restaurant, and get something to eat. So you might find that your interactions really change with other people. So the foods that we eat, for example, sugar and fruit juice will give you a rise in blood sugar and then a drop, and it's down again within about 20 minutes. So it's up, and then if somebody's a diabetic and their blood sugar drops, we all know that people are given fruit juice or sugar right away, but it doesn't last very long. And then if you have something like white rice, white flour, a bagel or a croissant, something like that, your blood sugar will rise, but it'll only stay up for about an hour. And that, we've heard of Chinese restaurant syndrome. You get something to eat and then you're hungry again after an hour and a half. And then if you use whole grains, you get a bit more leveling out. But what really, really works is foods that are called legumes, beans, peas, lentils. We find that you do need to keep delivering some carbohydrates to your brain. And the best delivery system is with these complex carbohydrates that are in legumes, because there's kind of a gradual delivery. It's attached to fiber and the carbohydrates come in. And so this turns out to be very, very good. So at breakfast, the things that people could have, like you've mentioned, a few interesting ideas. You said like you could put something in your breakfast cereal that is a legume. Have you tried that one?
No, but
well,
what
you've put beans into smoothies.
I put beans into smoothies because I don't like to use protein powders. Not as a general rule. There's times and places for certain ones that we will use, but generally speaking, I'll put beans into the kids' smoothies, sometimes in my own. But as you're talking, I'm kind of thinking, yeah, you know what? I would love to be able to stretch out an extra hour between my breakfast and my lunch. And what I'll do is I'll make a big instant pot of oatmeal every 2-3 days or so. So we have for the next few days. But I have these Indian split mung beans that really don't have much flavor or different texture than the steel cut oats. And I'm like, what if I replace half a cup of the oats with the mung beans? When I cook that in the instant pot, it would probably keep us a little bit satiated longer, and we wouldn't notice the flavor or the texture difference.
That's exactly. I've never thought of that one, but it's brilliant. Yeah.
Thank you.
And so legumes are things that grow in pods. They have like a little zipper. So, and peanuts are included in that. So that's why peanut butter can be a helpful item on your toast. Just simple as anything. You know, you don't need to get fancy cooking. Some people would use scrambled tofu. Many parts of the world, they would have something, they'd normally have something, legumes, beans, peas, lentils, like a masala dosa with some legumes in it, you know, cooked lentils or something like that.
So we have a lot of listeners that have younger kids, and I'm thinking for the kids that are out there that have this spike of sugar and then this down, they're not going to be super excited to eat beans and lentils, and so hiding it in food is kind of like secretive and not really fair, I guess, for a certain age.
Yeah.
But how do we get them to eat these legumes if they're not really into it? Is there something they could do?
Well, you know, it depends on the parents to some extent. Like usually what a parent likes, the kid will get to like.
Mm-hmm.
But they might not right off the bat, and of course they don't have to like every one. There's 20 different kinds of legumes. So they might like little pieces of tofu that have been marinated a bit and they can pick up with their fingers when they're little. They might like, you know, some kind of, one of the things we had in some of our books is hiding red lentils in spaghetti sauce. So you could hide it. I find a lot of times if kids help with the preparation, they will get to like it. You know, they actually, so one friend that we had in Louisville, Kentucky, would have his daughter put things into the blender. She stood up. She was a picky eater, but when she put it in, she'd be willing to eat it. So I find that there's a lot of different possibilities. So some will have the scrambled tofu, some will have things that are obvious, beanie, and some will like hummus even mid-morning, and they can dip their cracker, dip their celery stick, their carrot stick, their piece of red pepper. So there are really a lot of different choices. And kids don't come with a predisposition against anything. Like they kind of do learn. And then, of course, even if they don't like it right off the bat, they usually tell you to try, you know, a few different times, even 10 different times. And then when they go to kindergarten and their friends eating that, they'll go, oh, well, maybe I could eat that too, you know. Is that what you find with yours?
Yeah, it takes
Well,
some time.
not the school part, because our kids are plant-based, and not it's actually working the other way. Our kids are going to school, and then the other kids want to eat what our kids are eating, and then the parents call me and say, "Where do I get that fake cheese?" or "Where, like, how do I make those muffins they had for lunch?" So we actually find the opposite. But yes, absolutely. And something that we teach in our online picky eating program is that you need to give it to children over and over and over again. Sometimes change the flavor, change the texture, change the look at it. Don't call it something that it's not. So, because they're going to expect what they used to get. And then you call it what they used to get, and then they'll taste it and they'll be like, that's not what it is. And even if they do like it, they'll have this disconnect. So there's so many different tricks, but I like the idea of the peanut butter, because most children, our daughter as an exception, do like peanut butter. So putting peanut butter into their oatmeal, onto their toast, dipping apples in peanut butter for breakfast, if you find that
Or a snack.
a snack, and especially if you're finding that the teachers are coming back and telling you that the kid seems hungry or lethargic or not concentrating as much, 2 hours into the school day, peanut butter can be a great way to do that. Or what about like garbanzo bean flour and cooking with that as a gluten-free option as opposed to whole wheat or white flour? Would that make a difference as well, even though it's ground down?
That would, yeah. So you just have to be careful. As you probably know, you have a mouthful of garbanzo flour and it tastes absolutely dreadful. So it's got to be cooked.
Of course. Yes. I mean in your baking or cooking.
Right,
Yes.
Yeah. You could do some wonderful different options here, that are including chickpea flour and that kind of thing. What have you made with that?
So I'll use it to make our pancakes.
Yeah.
And then I make extra pancakes so that they can warm them up in the sandwich maker during the week, so they taste a little bit fresher still when they put them in there, because I won't buy them frozen pancake from the supermarket. So the garbanzo bean flour, but I'm thinking, can I put a bit of garbanzo bean flour in with the oatmeal banana muffins maybe, so that they're a little bit more satiated. And if you go a little bit at a time and see, does that flavor do? Okay, it does. A little bit more, and see what the perfect balance is. And of course it will change the outcome of the baking too. It might make it a little bit more dense or different. So you kind of have to be careful as you play with that. But for those children that are kind of famished by their morning recess, then we need to kind of reconsider how we're feeding them or what we're feeding them for breakfast.
That's right. Yeah.
Can I shift for a moment?
Yes.
So earlier you were talking about your book, Becoming Vegetarian, and you mentioned the dairy industry who wrote this paper to go against it. And you mentioned where you get your nutrients from other than dairy. And one of the most common questions we get is about calcium and the concern for calcium, because they know that we've been taught you get your calcium from milk and from dairy. One of the questions I got just recently that I would love for you to expand on is where we can get our calcium from plants that are going to be good quality, and we don't have to be so worried about not consuming the dairy.
Right. Really good point. And I've just been interested in this because I've been tracking my own bone density, vitamin D, and it took me back. In Canada, we were not, at that time when we wrote that book, we were not allowed to fortify non-dairy milks. It was illegal. You could put vitamin D in cow's milk, but you couldn't put it in soy milk. And I was working for So Nice at that time, a soy milk company, as a dietitian. And I remember working a bit with Health Canada. In 1997, we became allowed to put vitamin D into the non-dairy milks as well. It was in soy milk. And we could put calcium. We also put vitamin B12 and some riboflavin. And so soy milk became actually a better alternative than cow's milk. It didn't have the lactose that can cause problems, the lactose sugar. And but it is important for people to choose fortified. Look on the label. And I know some families wanted to have what was called natural, that didn't have anything added. But it's really good to have the calcium added and the vitamin D added. They make a big difference. And I was noticing with my own bone density that for that 5-year period when we first wrote our book, Becoming Vegan, and before the fortification was allowed, that my own bone density went down a little bit. And then after that, it didn't. But it's really a good way to have a little bit of fortified non-dairy milk, through different times in the day. So that is a good option. We absorb it well when you get little bits through the day. What was the other thing I was going to say? Let's see. Oh, yeah. I had a thread there and then I went off.
The question was, how do you make sure that you can get your calcium from plants?
Oh, yeah. So there are a lot of different options. Like the tofu will have variable amounts of calcium. Look on the label. Brenda Davis, I know, has found one at Costco that has really high calcium in it. And most of them will have easily as much calcium as cow's milk in a serving, or the non-dairy milks. Oh, I know what was one of the things I was going to say is that for children, we do recommend soy milk rather than the other non-dairy milks, because soy milk has something like 7 to 9 grams of protein per cup, whereas rice milk, almond milk, coconut milk, they have about 1 gram per cup, really a different amount of protein per cup. So the soy milks are a better choice.
I've seen a commercial, and I haven't had time to look it up and to see if it's in Canada or the United States, but there is one almond milk that is adding protein to the milk. So there's 9 grams per serving, but I haven't looked into it yet. So I don't know, where's this protein coming from? Does getting the protein there outweigh not getting that protein at all? What other ingredients are in there? I haven't really had a chance to look at that yet.
So most of us aren't that short of protein, but when you're raising kids, it is important to make sure it's in the different foods. And one of the other calcium sources we could have is fortified orange juice. That's it, if people are still giving juice to their kids, which of course most aren't, but that would be one option. And the other things are greens, specifically kale and bok choy and broccoli. Now you have to eat an awful lot of those to get significant amounts, but it's very, very well absorbed. So we'll have this kale wreath, I'll tell you a little bit later, but and also sesame tahini, almonds, almond butter. These are all calcium sources, which I'm saying. And white beans, black beans, the calcium set tofu, blackstrap molasses, if you put some of that as your sweetener in a muffin. So there are many, many calcium choices. One of the things I wanted to say was we had that incident with the Dairy Farmers of Canada way back in 1993. Well, then by 2016, the Dietitians of Canada asked me to do a keynote address for their national conference. It was in Winnipeg, and I got a standing ovation. And it was quite a change from the whole concept for dietitians, because we had been so heavily influenced by dairy. Now, I didn't make it a vegan talk. I made it a talk about how to overcome obstacles and also work in areas that profoundly make sense to you. So that, that was what my talk was about. But still, it was clear that it was more plant-based talk. Anyway, it was quite a change. And then Health Canada was very interested in our book, Becoming Vegan Comprehensive, when they were writing the new food guide, putting that together. They had that book in their office and were, using it because they made our new Canadian food guide very plant-based, in emphasis. They still have animal products on it, but they made it science-based instead of industry-based, as it had been before. So
yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you for sharing that. If you could tell our listeners a very simple recipe or meal that they could put together, because I know you've done some work with recipes and books and all that,
yeah.
what would you suggest that they get started with?
Okay. Let's see.
That's a tough one because you probably have so
Yeah.
many.
Or I know you wanted to tell us about the kale wreath. So
do that,
maybe
yeah.
you can tell us about that so people
Oh.
can then look, we can link to it so that they can make it themselves.
I'll tell you one though that is easy, but it's one a variable interest for kids because it has some curry in it. But there's one called curry in a hurry that I really like because it's only got like 4 ingredients, one of which is water, you know, so it's real easy. So you use red lentils and some onions chopped up and some Patak's curry paste. And if you look on my website, which is nutrispeak.com, and look at the videos page, you'll see how to make this curry in a hurry. And it's also very easy with an Instant Pot, which you mentioned, because I like that, because then I can go and do something else and not worry that it's going to burn, which used to happen before I got my Instant Pot. You know? Yeah, I'd get so interested in something way off there. Anyway, so there can be really simple recipes. We also, we've got a book, Cooking Vegetarian or Cooking Vegan, with simple recipes. I did it with a chef from the Four Seasons. And it can be really, really easy once you get your recipes together. So I was going to say for a couple of Christmas things or holiday, Diwali, Hanukkah, whatever your family celebration is, that there can be a kale and red pepper holly wreath. And so for your website, we've got that recipe sent into you and some pictures. And so what you do is just take a lot of kale, and to use kale, it's kind of rubbery to just eat it, but you fold each leaf in half and then take out the stem with a knife and then chop it matchstick thin and then steam it a little bit and then use a little bit of oil and balsamic vinegar, tamari, sprinkle that on after it's steamed, form it into a circle on a big platter and sprinkle on either some chopped red pepper or chopped cranberry tomatoes, tiny little tomatoes, and it looks like this beautiful wreath on the table. And people will really enjoy that. It's just simple.
Sounds
but
nice.
We're told for many reasons, like for reducing our risk of heart disease and diabetes, to eat more greens. And this is a good way to do that.
That is a lovely way to do that. And it's been so wonderful talking with you today, learning from somebody who's been doing it for so long and talking about, it's really important because people don't necessarily realize blood sugar levels can affect them if they're not diabetic. So this has been a wonderful educational talk, and we will link to all of your all of the things that we talked about today in our show notes at plantrainers.com. If somebody would like to reach out or learn more about you, where would you like them to go?
Okay, they could look at our website, nutrispeak.com. And my email address is just my name, vesanto.melina@gmail.com. And we also put for your website a gravy recipe, mushroom gravy. That can bring a holiday meal together nicely too. So
very cool.
It's really a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you so much, Vesanto, for being here. We really appreciate you taking the time and for joining us on the Plant Trainers podcast.
Okay, bye for now.